Oh my god. There's like hardly nothing left. What have I gotten myself into? So the main reason Whitney and I ended up with this wagon, and the main reason it was pulled off of the road some 15, 20 years ago, is the floorboards in this are said to be very, very bad, almost non-existent. So bad, in fact, that the previous owner was worried structural integrity was compromised. Now, I know I've been driving it that way, but I mean, it seems solid enough. So I've already taken the seats out. We're going to pull things out and just see how bad they really are. With the seats out, now we could take out all the trim, pull out the carpet, and see just how bad things are underneath. So the outlook was not very good. There are some poorly done patches, a lot of daylight, and some big gaping holes. So it looks like it would be a whole lot easier to just cut everything out and make all new panels from scratch. Well, let's get out the grinder. Before we start getting crazy with the grinder, we need to drop the gas tank. The gas tank rides up close against the toe boards, which are also rotten out and need to be cut away. So it's probably smart to get this out of the way before I start cutting because I don't want to get myself exploded or nothing. Once the tank is down and out of the way, we can get cutting. The search for solid, weldable, non-corroded steel led to having to remove probably 80 to 90% of the floor. This collection of iron oxide unceremoniously heaped out into the driveway is what needed to be removed from the Corvair. Lots of time was spent cutting away the cancer and getting ourselves some nice, clean edges, so that way our new, freshly made panels would have something that was very easy to be welded up to. It would make this whole job look a whole lot more smoother and get us a much better factory finish. How am I going to fill this dirty, great big hole where the floor of the Corvair used to be? I could go to some of your Corvair parts houses and buy some patch panels, but they only cover the front footwell and the rear footwell, leaving the middle part out entirely. So it looks like the cheapest and, most cost-effective option would be to buy a 4x8 sheet of 18 gauge sheet metal, which is a little bit thicker than factory, and replicate the factory stampings with my trusty bead roller. First, I am going to make the easiest panels, which are the patches to the sills around where the front heater outlets are. These are really easy because, well, one, they're flat, and two, they're rectangular. Nothing really magical to do here other than, cut out the little area for the heater outlet. With our first panel marked out on the steel, all I got to do is cut it out, paint it to protect it from rusting, and then weld it onto the car. With the sills tacked in, I can move to making the panel for the frontmost portion of the center tunnel. Here's the cardboard template getting traced out onto the steel. Here's the panel all marked out on the steel with lines made for bends, beads, and holes to be drilled. Next, I can get this thing cut out and we'll move over to the bead roller. To replicate the deep stampings that are in front of and behind where the shifter would go on a 3-speed or 4-speed car, I'm doing several passes on these, increasing the depth as I go. This is 18 gauge sheet metal, which is right up to the limit of what my bead roller can do. And by doing multiple passes and slowly increasing the depth, it minimizes the amount of warpage on the panel so it still stays relatively straight. With the factory stamping replicated by the bead roller, I can now get it over to the bench and start bending in the flanges to mimic the contours of the center tunnel. here is the finished product. The next step is to drill holes for bolts and spot welds. Once all the spot welds are drilled out, I can give it a nice coat of weld-through primer and get it welded into the car. Looks good so far. The next step is to replace a section of this flange that runs either side of the tunnel underneath like this. It gives extra support to the tunnel to make it a little bit more rigid, and it also serves as a basis to mount the inspection cover from underneath. With the flange patch all clamped up, it can now be welded in place. With the flange sorted, I can take care of these little sections of the tunnel here that are also missing due to rust. Gratuitous use of the body hammer in my forearm gives us pieces that end up looking like this, which can then get a coat of weld-through primer like this. Then they can be welded into the tunnel like this. With the tunnel sorted, we can focus on the front footwell. As always, we start out with a cardboard template. We trace it out onto the steel, cut it out, jump on over to the bead roller and get some of those factory fresh stamping marks in there. Hit it with some weld-through primer, and then weld it into the car. This is all that remains of the center section of the floor. This was the most intact part of the center, so it was perfect for making a cardboard template. I can then turn that cardboard template into a piece of steel. Seems to match the old factory panel pretty well. Now I can spend an inordinate amount of time making the little tabs to hold the speedometer cable. Here I'm using a blue permanent marker as machinist blue. Works well enough in this application. I shared a little more detail about these because slightly embarrassed to say that it took me the same amount of time to make these two little tabs as it did for me to make two whole panels. At any rate, let's get these panels welded into the wagon. I don't know about you folks, but I think I can be happy with how these turned out. Nobody's gonna really see this anyway, so. With the middle section now burned in and coated in some weld-through primer, we can focus on this hole right here. First, I'll take this flat piece of cardboard, make it not flat, then flatten it again, make it onto some steel, and then we weld that steel into the car. Repeat the process for the other side, and we've almost got a whole floor. The last bit of the floor that allows daylight through is where our tootsies go, here and here. I'm sure if everyone has stayed with me to this point in the video, we're all very familiar with how this process is. I have now reached the point in the repair where the inside of the car is now sealed off from underneath. I'll stop it at this point for now because things get a little more complicated from here. Thanks for watching. Hello viewers. If you'd like to stay up to date on my camp wagon revival and see me revive other cars that have been forgotten about, click here. If you want to stay up to date on all the other projects that I've got going on, be sure you subscribe and click the notification bell. Try to post as often as I can. Also, if you like guitars, check out my other channel here. I buy and sell old guitars, and the weirder the better. I have the same taste in cars as I do guitars. So thanks. Keep watching.